Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back again on AllThingsConnected Virtual Thought Leadership Series. And today we have the topic, an interesting topic and relevant topic, I must say, which is about 5G network and IoT cybersecurity. So as we talk about the innovation and the application which 5G and a lot of other innovation in AI, machine learning, IoT are being enabled, whether to build solutions for smart cities, industry 4.0, manufacturing, health, and so forth, we also need to consider cybersecurity. Let me welcome quickly David, who is the head of technology APAC for GSMA. And then we have four wonderful speakers pulling in different perspective. Professor Shafi, who is the surgeon, futurist. Look for him on YouTube or TED. You will see a lot of interesting work which Professor Shafi is doing on telehealth, remote surgery. Then we have got Nguyen from Viettel. He is the technology and new service development team. And then we have got Dong Hee-sim. He is the head of global standards from Telecom Korea. And then last but not the least, we have Kiran. He is the VP for digital security from Subex. He is dialing from US mid of night. So with that, I would like to hand over the virtual stage to David and help us take for this interesting conversation for rest about 90 minutes. Over to you, David.
Thank you very much for that introduction, CK. I'm David Turkington, as previously introduced, and I'm head of technology for GSMA in APAC area. The GSMA is the Global Association of Mobile Operators worldwide. We represent some 750 odd mobile operators, plus associated partners in the ecosystem, for example, the vendors of equipment, the big guys like Google and Facebook and all are all members too, cloud providers and the little guys as well. And we're expanding our membership too, of course, because what we're finding is more and more players are coming into this market. Most famously, we run the Barcelona Mobile World Congress every year, except this year for obvious unfortunate reasons. I'm sure you can see it from all of us in our various home deco work from home scenarios. And this is one of the challenges that we'll probably talk about a little during today. But what I wanted to get onto is IoT is a big thing for us because we see it as an opportunity for the operators to take hold of the future, be involved in the future in various vertical industries, and bring the future to us, hopefully sooner rather than later. IoT particularly is very interesting in 5G terms because it brings more bandwidth and lower latency, and this will enable new opportunities, new applications, new solutions that we simply haven't thought about yet. The example I think about is whenever Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, he didn't see it going to create Airbnb or Uber or anything like this, and neither do we. All we know is we're giving you these capabilities that will be able to do things that were simply not possible to do before. And so this is why it's very exciting. But also we have to bear in mind that security is a big issue. But in the mobile world, you know, the definition of insecure endpoint is the phone. If you think about it, the phone is not under the operator's control. People can take them and hack them and change them and put in new software and get them to do things they weren't originally intended. And this is it hasn't crashed the network. So I think, you know, we have to be fairly confident that we haven't screwed up entirely with the security of the mobile phone system, but still there's opportunities that for things to not work properly and to be opportunity to improve things indeed. Because we don't, if there's thousands and thousands more devices because of IoT wide deployment, then we don't want these things to be having to lock them down or remotely disable them, because that's a little bit too much trouble for everyone. But then again, like I say, I've saw in one other document that people were saying about the IoT water cooler can be used to hack into the customer systems and download data. That's not really exactly how it works, I don't think. So we don't have to worry about that so much. But of course, there's still a security issue, and it's better to put that in the beginning than add it on later. So what we're trying to do with IoT is solve problems, come up with solutions, and enable efficiencies and opportunities that simply weren't there before. Again, as long as we mitigate against the challenges of security and any mistakes that might introduce. So, like I said, these are new opportunities that we simply couldn't do before, and I think this is where the interesting innovation will come along. And I think my guests here today will help us understand where these opportunities are and what we need to do to take advantage of them. So just one more thing from me is GSMA, we're having our Thrive event in early November, 3rd to the 5th. It's an online event this year again, as we're all online these days. And I'd welcome you to sort of sign up for that as well. So without further ado, let me move on to my first of a few questions. We'll be taking questions in the Q&A on the side. So if you have any burning questions for our panelists, do ping us on there, and I'll try and get to them. And hopefully, we won't. We'll get through them all before the end.
As I want to say, that's my 5G and IoT deployment plans. Since last year, we have the first 5G call on last April, only 2 months after Korea and USA. And we also deploy some 5G cluster in some biggest city of Vietnam, and we also have the NB-IoT network in the 2 biggest city also. For this year, we will have planned to commercialize the 5G service in the next few weeks, and also we explore the IoT platform and use case. And this year we also have tried 5G standalone. Will be one of the few mobile operators that deploy 5G standalone. As you know, there's no commercial 5G standalone network until now. As the next few years, we will expand the network, and we will develop our own connected car platform, and the other 2 other IoT use case we are focusing is the track and trail solution and Industry 4.0 solution. And by 2023, we hope that we can have nationwide 5G and IoT network, and we have 5G standalone network for high-tech era and Industry 4.0 use case. About the security risks, we divide 5G use case and application as 3 parts. For consumer use case, we have soon deploy in-hand mobile broadband and fixed wireless access, and then we deploy 4K, SK video, and AR, VR, and cloud gaming. For the end user, we think that there are some issues that, because as you know, 5G is more powerful and it's similar to like the workstation in the past. So there will be the risk for the attack from weaponized 5G powerful smartphone to our network, and we consider it inside our network. The second kind of application is ultra reliable and low latency application like smart factory, drone, remote operation, smart grid, and even in future autonomous car. We see that for that line use case, is the latency and available is not an option that we can make the choice. So any risk to security that result in the high latency and unavailability of the system will result in the damage to our customer. The last one is the massive IoT application we think that for IoT we have two issues. First is the security, and also the second issue is privacy. If we cannot control security for IoT because the number of devices will increase year by year, so it can be exploited and turned into a zombie to our network and into the society. So it's also very dangerous. We want to share our strategy on cybersecurity. We can honestly to say Viettel have invested a lot in security issue. We have Viettel Cybersecurity is one of subsidiary of Viettel responsible for security, and they have about 200 engineering experts. And for the expert level, we already find out about 200 zero-day security error for tier one company in the world, even the Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and Tesla. And we, even from Vietnam, we have our global security operations center that can manage all of our network in 11 countries, more than 1,000 websites, 16,000 applications, and 10,000 server, and to care about more than 100 million subscribers. So they operate 24/7 to keep the security in safe. We rely on our own telecom abnormal detection system that care about all the security issue for our telecom network. It can help to protect the customer and to protect the network and protect from the threats from outside and threats from inside. For example, for customer, we can detect and block any abnormal signaling message that can use by hacker to collect the location data, or who can intercept the code and some message of the customer, or can turn the customer device to do the DDoS attack. For protecting the network, we can detect and block the abnormal signaling message that can attack to our network. For example, the DDoS and the billing fraud, and any issues that can collect subscriber location distribution in our network, we can protect, or even any kind of roaming or international call issue we can detect from this kind of system. Now we upgrade that system, and it can apply with machine learning and AI to allow us to auto-detect and protect any attack to our network from inside and outside. For 5G and IoT the security approach, we think that we agree with the guideline by GSMA that we should enforce the security in the designing. It means we need to work with a vendor or a partner to ensure that the security will be ensured since the time is research or develop the product and service. I think for 5G, there are some good news. First will be the established end-to-end trust between the sender and receiver. And the second thing is there will be encryption. Is the mandatory for encryption for all kind of inter or intra-network traffic. So it means that we afraid that every link can be tapped. So everything need to encrypt to ensure that even when they tap the network, they can get the information they want. And the last thing is, I think 3GPP do good work on network protection by provide some kind of centralized signaling data integrity system and new IT protocol stack. And also the good news is when we deploy 5G with the standalone architect, we can do the network slicing, so we can differentiate the network requirement for each kind of service. So we can fulfill the requirement for different kind of category for security. And the last thing we think that in 5G, the subscriber and device protection can provide with more advanced mechanism. For example, the 5G SIM can provide more security enhancement that block the risk for catching the IMSI of the subscriber. So it's also a good thing. But on another side, 5G can also very vulnerable by new security challenge. The first thing is our network is more open. It's some kind of service-based network, so network function or service can be performed by the outside network of outside partner. So it make our telecom network will not be isolated from the risk of security attack. Um, the second thing is because now the network will be more virtualized and cloud native, so everything will put on the hypervisor. So we need to the high security protection for our entire data center or hypervisor is similar to the brain of the system. The next thing is now the subscriber information, the SIM profile will be downloaded via internet, via the HTTP connection between mobile network and mobile device and the SIM platform from the cloud hosted. So we need to ensure the encryption and the data protection for subscriber data. The last thing is AI technology is applied to our network, and so, but on another side, it's also available to attack to hacker or as a AI driven attack can anticipate our network. Um, for our strategy for security, we not change a lot approach, but we want to enforce the existing security policy and conflict prevention. Um, for example, every node and every firewall network zone, we will still apply the IP security or the security gateway, the firewall and the security agent on each server or enforcement of network nodes configuration by access list or by filter in order to ensure the security. And the other thing we have is the identity access management. We centralize control and monitor and audit the access to all the network element and IT system to a single gateway, so we can control it. So every user will be controlled and monitor the behavior and the single key, so it can ensure that all the chain to our network will be allowed, and with exactly the role that just people allowed to do the modification to the configuration. And the last thing we think that the people is the most important resource for security. We need to train our customer, our employee to adapt to new security requirements. Uh, and for daily operation of security, we also need to maintain the hardening of security, and we need to update the security policy, and we can also expand our security operation center not only for Viettel, but we also provide the service to the government, the ministry, and the local government, and even the large enterprise of Vietnam, for example, Vietnam Airlines or any other companies, they will can use our service. So we can have 4x7 SoC to provide the service to them. And the last thing that we think that technology cannot sometimes it cannot cover all the case. So in case any attack happen, we need to have the plan to quick recover and recoveries to restore the service and collect ensure that the data of the customer still in safe. And the last thing we need some kind of interaction to automate and machine learning to address to any security issue and attack to our network. The last thing is that we think that 5G security is not new security challenge. 5G and IoT introduce new IoT security challenge. But Viettel have addressed the problem and prepare in advance. So for us, new solution mean existing solution with AI machine learning to add on and apply the security by design for 5G and IoT. And the last thing is focusing on people, our employee and our customer. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Dong-hee Sim, working for SK Telecom as a head of global standards. First of all, I'd like to thank AllThingsConnected and GSMA for giving me opportunity to speak at this event. This presentation is about the paradigm shift on the communication infra and security threat from that perspective, in particular quantum computing attack and how to avoid that with quantum-based security. Okay. So after smartphone is deployed into the world, which means everyone has a smartphone now, so lots of innovative services follow. So I'm sure there will be more innovative applications and services to come. But now things are getting connected, and even things are getting intelligent with the artificial intelligence, augmented reality, etc. So Internet of Things are becoming, from our perspective, Internet of Actions to provide a service at offline. So it means cybersecurity is not just for the cyberspace itself. It is expanded to physical space as Internet is becoming Internet of Actions, as I said. So there are many interesting threats and reports from that perspective. Going back to 2013, December, the news broke in Target, which is a supermarket chain, as you know, in the United States. There was massive customer data breach and over 40 million debit and credit card information were compromised. And they investigated how this happened, and they found that hackers gained access to Target POS system, which is payment system, you know, through their HVAC, APAC, which is heat and cooling and ventilation system. So hackers simply got through one of IoT devices in Target. The point is that while individually each device, sensor or actuator may not present in major threat, single hack device may provide an entry point to whole system. And very recently, Tencent Keen Security Lab claimed that they could remotely gain root privilege of autopilot software and control car steering system. Even they could disturb auto wipe function. Moreover, they claimed that they were capable to mislead Tesla car into reverse lane with minor changes on the road to disturb machine learning software in Tesla car. So as devices and systems in our critical infrastructure become ever more interconnected, it is increasingly important to ensure that they have adequate cryptographic protections. Getting back to the big picture, so we think now is the early stage of fourth industrial revolution. So the first two industrial revolutions about the offline itself with factory and electricity, that's shown in the screen. And third revolution follows with the PC and internet. Now influence of ICT technology extended to the offline to create unprecedented value. So we call it fourth industrial revolution. So now we launched the fifth generation 5G. mobile network service in South Korea, and now is United States and Europe and Asia. So we actually deployed 5G only last year, actually. So prepared ourselves in the new era, which is about the transforming offline with online and mobile technologies. So we believe 5G will realize a cyber-physical system in fourth industrial revolution age. In turn, simply put, security will be everywhere, and we should make sure the end-to-end security of everything. So I will touch quantum-based security in this presentation, as we know that security challenges are evolving towards quantum level, as I quickly touched in the beginning, which means security practices must therefore evolve too. So from cyber cryptography perspective, there are also major threats, and public key cryptography is based on mathematical problems, which can be broken by future technology, which is quantum computing. And also this means that increasing computing power makes it easier to practice cryptography. And finally, the most important one is quantum computing, as I said. So it can solve certain mathematical problems exponentially faster than classical computing, as it relies on quantum physics. Sorry. So current weakest link from the security perspective is the key distribution based on cryptography, as shown in this screen. So we need to have a much better solution to distribute secret keys between distant parties. So the answer is quantum key distribution. So quantum cryptography based on quantum key distribution allows us key exchange between two remote parties with absolute security, as this is guaranteed by fundamental laws of quantum physics. So I don't want to go details, but it's well known. Maybe you can review the technology from the web and these slides, etc. So SK Telecom made an effort to aiming to develop a secure infrastructure, as with quantum key distribution, also quantum random number generator, which is for almost a decade. So also we invested in World Quantum company, ID Quantic. So quantum random number generator is used to generate random number based on quantum physics. So this is the perfect entropy will be given. So we introduced quantum random number generator in our 5G network too. So if I go into, more details in how we deployed, the QKD technology in 5G. So basically we, in the Seoul headquarters, from Seoul to Daegu, this is the southern part of the our network in South Korea. South Korea is a bit smaller, compared to other regions. So we deployed actually QKD in 5G backhaul from node P to the other backhaul side. So the total length is 380 kilometer encrypted with QKD. It's not fully deployed yet, so we slowly deploy QKD technology into our whole network in 5G. So currently the coverage is 380 kilometer. We use the quantum key distribution relay node between two backhaul nodes from Seoul to Daegu actually. So for the QRNG part, we deployed QRNG into our 5G authentication server. So we replaced the old ones, the software-based QRNG with the QRNG. So 5G authentication factor actually need random number to authenticate the users between authentication server and the device, smartphone, UE. And we deployed the QRNG in our 5G authentication server. So we use now quantum random number generator to generate the random numbers in 5G network. Also, early this year, we collaborate with the Samsung device vendor, and we put the QRNG into their device, 5G phone, and then as I said, in the network side, we used QRNG in the 5G authentication server. In the network side, now we can use QRNG in the smartphone too to generate random numbers in the smartphone too. So it's vice versa, it's a network and a smartphone. So we slowly deploy the QKD. Also, we use QRNG, and then I guess we will introduce more smartphone models in the future. And also, we are making a lot of efforts to make standards for the QKD and QRNG, in particular IoT. There is 2 groups, study group 17 for the security and 13 for the network perspective. So you can imagine if you put the QKD technologies and QRNG into the network, there will be new interfaces and then new protocols between them. So we introduced QRNG architecture. How can you differentiate QRNG from the previous version of RNG? So we made an effort to produce new standards in IoT, X.1702, which is QRNG architecture, which was approved and published last year. And we also make an effort to standardize the QKD perspective, so security perspective of QRNG, also how to combine the keys with the QKD, generate keys with the previously encrypted keys. So we make an effort to produce 2 standards, X.1710, which is security perspective framework for the QKD, and 1714 for the key combination with QKD, which were consented actually early this month, and then will be approved after reviewing from the national bodies in IoT. So I hope it will be done at the end of this year, before the end of this year. Also, we also produced a technical report on QKD, which is very first the QKD white paper, so which was already published in early this year. Also, we also working in our ETI side, and there is an industry specification group about QKD. So we try to introduce using SDN for the QKD. Also, so new work item proposed ourselves and were approved, and then we actively engage in ETI members for producing this kind of specific standards in ETI too. So, as I said, security emerges as the most important issue in 5G era. It's offline, online. It's end-to-end security is quite important. So SK Telecom is determined to provide the most secure 5G network. So focusing on expanding ecosystem quantum cryptography technology in particular, because as I said before, quantum computing I think will come. We don't know, we are not sure which time frame, but a lot of people in 10 years, some people to 20 years, some people 30 years, but we don't know. But a lot of companies Google, IBM, even Microsoft, and a lot of big major companies working on quantum computing. If quantum computing is available, quantum computing attack will come, and then the current public cryptography system will be damaged. So we have to prepare ourselves. So as a lot of the operators now deploy 5G, so it will stay at least 40 years to come. So we see the quantum cryptographic technologies, i.e. QKD and QRNG, will be very important to ourselves, protect our network from the quantum computing attack. Okay, so that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much, CK, for the invitation again to speak around the concept of 5G and healthcare. I'm going to keep it fairly simple. You will use case examples and also share a vision and perhaps inspire you to think about where the 5G lies in terms of capability and how it can affect patients and outcomes. So if you look at the first thing, we talked about the Internet of Things, but now we will talk about the Internet of Medical Things. And 5G for me is a bit that manages everything together. The convergence of technologies we described earlier. And 5G underpins all of these things. The missing link before for IoT was the networking, the connectivity. And now, of course, we have super fast transmission and low latency, which will allow us to reimagine what healthcare might look like in the future. So for me, 5G, I call it the covalent bond that keeps everything in sync. And it was the kind of the last piece, the jigsaw puzzle to create the new world that we live in. If we look at just very quickly at the healthcare system of the future, we know it's going to be digital and of course going to be connected. It's vital that we connect people around the globe to ensure that healthcare is delivered more fairly and becomes more affordable. Data is going to be the key driver, of course, as well as being a patient-centric system. But of course, all the systems that we work with, data, electronic health records, sensors, etc., will be integrated. So this is kind of the future we're looking for. And this will be hopefully very quickly transitioned into over the next 5 to 10 years, but there's much work to be done, of course. The last 6 months has been difficult for the pandemic. What it's shown us that we can compress time, we can innovate rapidly. Over the last few months, we've seen a kind of accelerated care. We've used more innovative solutions to enable healthcare on a global level. So this has been a great opportunity for us in healthcare, not to be slow, but to be much faster in adoption of these technologies. Let's go back to the basic principles of the doctor-patient relationship, the kind of the consult. This was the Futurist from 1924, thinking about the future of that consultation. They're talking about, of course, not radio doctors, but of course, telemedicine. This is 100 years before we really explored this properly. And in fact, in the last 6 months, we've seen acceleration, expansion of telemedicine. In one cancer hospital, we've seen visits up by 5,000% in the first 3 months of the pandemic. We're seeing a plethora of telemedic companies. The new normal is going to be total triage, being at home, remote, connected to doctors remotely on an app or on by phone or by text, whatever it is. Now this is here to stay. Last year it was difficult to implement this. Now it's easier. Let's take a look at Asia, of course, and we see Ping An, an insurance company in China, who are basically telemedicine on steroids. They have 300 million users. Which is incredible. This was back in October of last year, with over 160 million consults per month. Can you imagine that? Suddenly, the world is more connected. And this is where 5G has impact, because we've been using telemedicine. We need larger bandwidth, more people in the system. So this is where 5G has a great role to play in democratizing healthcare. And now, of course, we're seeing even more care in the community, where we're seeing these kind of stand-up solutions. We can walk into a booth, have your blood pressure, pulse, temperature measured, have a telemedicine consult, and then have an electronic prescribing and have your drugs delivered next door, which you pick up using a smart card. All of these things can be amplified, bringing care back into the community, making it more affordable and more accessible for a lot of people. So 5G will hopefully underpin some of the technologies. The other thing we'll think about is the fact that it's about data and how we're going to get more biological data from ourselves. And this is a picture from Time magazine a few years ago saying that we're going to have so much data because we're going to never be offline. Yesterday, we saw the launch of the Apple Watch 6, which you can see here in the picture. Now, it not only measures the ECG, it's also able to measure blood oxygen. Suddenly, these devices that are small can connect, can give you kind of real-time information, and perhaps using 5G can give that to your doctor or your hospital so they can monitor it going forward. Now we're seeing a plethora of sensors and wearables that are going to be used in the future, whether it's advanced intelligence systems using AI for people with chronic obstructive airways disease or asthma, or indeed diabetics having remote access using the Libra system here, or even an artificial pancreas in the future, which will automatically regulate your glucose levels. And again, these can be used in the 5G to disseminate information in real time to give you real analytics going forward. And this is great. We've seen how AI is now going to transform healthcare. And AI is a whole big topic in itself. I'll just touch on a few ideas where now that we're seeing the advantages of AI, diagnose images, pictures of a retina, CT scans, MRI scans, and also in actual therapeutic areas of medicine and surgery. So AI is going to be big. It's going to be the biggest player in healthcare. And it will underpin a lot of things we do going forward. And we've seen recently, just only a couple of weeks ago, SoftBank investing heavily in the therapeutics company Bioformis, who was originally based in Singapore, now in Boston, of course. And they're looking at data analytics using AI and also biosensors to monitor the treatment pathways, which makes sense because then you can get real-time information and large amounts of data need to be assessed using either quantum computing or even advanced intelligence systems. What about extended reality? Augmented, virtual, mixed reality are coming in, and we've experimented with these. And imagine where 5G might add value. Let's go back a few years, 2014. I did the world's first operation using Google Glass, transmitting live operation across the globe. And I taught 15,000 students across the globe. This was using just basically a 3G connection at the time. Can you imagine with 5G, how quick it will be, the lower latency, the higher bandwidth? We can now treat people in different ways and connect with people, educate, train on a global level. This is the image that we created of all the people I taught on that single day using Google Glass. We use Google Glass also in different ways. We used it for helicopters. We used it for accident emergency systems. So you can do real-time analysis and video feedback from the accident, for example, or the emergency. So you can feed back information to the hospital. And in Milan 2019, they're using mixed reality devices to relay all the information from patients from the ambulance back to the hospital so they can actually quicken the treatment pathway and get advice as necessary. So see the difference between 2015 and where we are in 2019, a huge change in what we can do. And the other thing we did, of course, is the virtual reality operation. We did the world's first operation in 2016, company Medical Realities, a streamed live operation using VR. In those days, we used, these camera systems. We're using Wi-Fi. Imagine 5G now. You could be anywhere in the world. We can actually relay information. On this day, way back in 2016, I taught 55,000 people in 140 countries and 4,000 cities, all connected, saying that actually using a Google Cardboard headset, using a smartphone, and then using an app, we can now connect with people. Imagine that in 5G now. Imagine how quick and better it will be with high bandwidth, much low latency, and also much better visualization of what's going on in the operating theatre. And now we've launched over the last few years the world's first VR platform for learning, for surgery, for medical students, for healthcare workers. And now in the last 6 months during the pandemic, we're now seeing an explosion of interest in medical education that's remote. Medical students, doctors, healthcare workers cannot go to the operating theatre or go to the ward because of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's lack of face-to-face. Therefore, we've got to think differently. How do we be more remote? How do we use avatars, holograms, social kind of connections in a different world using these kind of devices going forward? This brings me back to, of course, how we connect. At the moment, of course, we used to travel a lot in the last few years. That's all stopped, which is a good thing. It will save our planet. But now we can use different ways of meeting people in this virtual space. They call me the virtual surgeon because I've experimented with holograms and avatars, etc. This is what we did a couple of years ago, where I connected with 2 surgeons whilst in London. The other surgeons were in New York and in India. And with using the HoloLens device, we could connect with them. And so this is me in the operating theatre of Royal London Hospital, connecting with surgeons as their avatars in mixed reality, so that we can connect, talk about images, CT, share graphics, etc. in real time. This is the first time this was done. Imagine that, again, powered by 5G now, be much, much better, more people can be involved, etc. And you can actually imagine what that can look like in the future. This is very, of course, futuristic, but it's now become This is me using a hologram. Again, this is in 5G with a company called Double Me, where I became almost a real hologram, live transmitted. This is obviously, will get better and better. It won't be as grainy, be able to connect with people. And I've given talks remotely using my hologram. I do a lot of talks around the world. Actually, it's time expensive, it's inefficient use of my time. Why not use your hologram and perhaps AI and voice tech to be able to transmit itself on a global level? We saw this kind of picture of being online earlier, and we've seen the sensors we described earlier. But here we are. This is the future of surgery. This is a picture from the Dubai Futures Museum, which will open hopefully Expo 2021 now because it's been moved back a year. This is the future of healthcare, isn't it? This is surgery where they've got 3D printing, we've got augmented reality, we have images, we have kind of pre-planning of information and scanners that are now much more high tech. So this is a glimpse of the future. Of course, surgery now will be enabled and powered by things like this, where we have kind of AR devices able to overlay information in real time, images, to be able to plan the operation. And also during the operation, we can use AI analytics to navigate through an operation much more safely and more securely. So these are the kind of things we'll be looking for in the future, and 5G will be the enabler, as I said before. What about the real power of 5G? This is the Lindbergh operation. Lindbergh, of course, comes from the first time that someone traveled the Atlantic. This was the first transatlantic robotic-assisted telesurgery back in 2001. This was a long time ago, using ISDN lines. Now imagine that same robotic operation. So this patient was in Strasbourg, and the surgeons were in New York, operating remotely back in 2001. So that's great. It was amazing kind of pioneering work. But now, of course, we moved forward in China back in 2019. A year ago, we saw the first robotic surgery performed live, also remotely using 5G. With because of the 0.1 millisecond delay, it was imperceptible. It was real time to operate around the world. So this will democratize healthcare as we speak. And of course, we're autonomous people. We know Tesla and other car companies are working furiously with their autonomous vehicles with self-driving capability, which will be launched, I'm sure, fairly soon. And that's been great as an example for us in medicine. What about autonomous surgery? Well, here we are. Here's an autonomous surgeon, a robot doing an operation, joining two bits of bow together. So actually, we're learning a lot from different industries. Healthcare, for me, is the one vertical that allows us to really bring it together. It's the kind of one discipline where all the internet medical things, the technology we're describing, converge. And we're seeing great expansion, and it's huge interest for me, but actually it should be interest to all of you because of the possibilities, the endless possibilities of making healthcare more affordable, more accessible, and more equitable. Thank you very much.
So very quickly, I know CK is going to be running out of time quickly, so I'm trying to catch up on some of it. I want to introduce where we come from. We are Subex. I work for Subex, and Subex is a digital trust company. We're 25 years old and have been in providing risk management and security solutions to the telecom telco segment for quite some time. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've kind of moved into areas that are outside the telco's realm, largely into the enterprise, manufacturing, smart cities, and connected car kind of spaces, providing security to IoT and OT devices. As a team, I had the cybersecurity practice in Subex, and we are largely a research-driven organization. Today, we run some of the world's largest IoT and OT honeypots. We get attacked about 12 million times a day, picking up over 150 new types of malwares, and 0 days on a daily basis. And more or less having a threat intelligence in this particular space over and above most other people. We know that because we buy everyone else's threat intelligence and we benchmark ourselves against that. We've also won quite a few awards for having the best IoT security platform. Today I'm here to basically talk to you all about where our journey is in the 5G space and how we've been working with telcos and what are the issues we're seeing in the world. We have quite a few installations around 5G, especially in the North American and in the Southeast Asian region. We have a few POCs going on in enterprises, and I have a specific use case that I will cover today. Obviously, as most of my, especially Anne and Donnie had alluded, 5G is a very, very secure, a much more secure protocol as compared to what came before it, right? The 2G, 3Gs, and 4G. So quite a lot of the security features have been covered in the previous presentation, but a few that I want to mention specifically is, what we call the interoperator security. Before, 5G, we worked in telcos worked in something called the wall garden. So the wall garden meant that if you were a trusted, provider, everything inside that wall garden was trusted, right? You would be allowed in, and you could connect to anything. What 5G brings in is a complete, a trust-driven approach. The approach is that the further you are away from the, from the network, the less trust the the network has on you, and hence you have to basically prove yourself throughout. Most of the authentication mechanisms are a lot more robust. Keys are segmented, so it's much more difficult to have a single point of failure, and even the radio network is segregated as compared to the control unit, and the radio network is separate, so that if you have a compromise on one side, the security breach does not essentially traverse beyond that particular segment. However, having all of the security, it still makes 5G largely, it's still with a lot of holes and security issues. And what that means is, with the type of use cases that Dr. Shafi was referring to, it also, when it drives those kind of use cases, it becomes a target for malicious actors to take down that network, and a more lucrative piece of equipment to actually bring down. So although the security is there, because of the nature of the applications that run on that infrastructure, 5G continues and remains a vulnerable ecosystem. So talking to multiple CISOs, as chief information security officers, IT directors of IT, people who are in the early stages of 5G adoption, we've had a few interactions with them. We are working with them. Some of the key pain points that they bring up are some of the for example, the biggest thing is, how do they secure their enterprise? Today, a large amount of their operations run on IT infrastructure that they are migrating to 5G. And if these nodes or these MEC nodes, or even in standalone networks, if they come down, how would it impact their their mission critical infrastructure? So that is one of the key considerations that they have. Primarily because if you look at the applications running on these infrastructures, they come in with, they're largely open, a large number of APIs, a lot of cloud conduits, and applications get instantiated on the node, not necessarily with a lot of control on them. So you are driving third-party applications on the node that you may or may not actually have a tremendous amount of control on. And this basically brings a certain amount of insecurity to the whole 5G proposition. Also, when you look at another very big criteria that is driving a lot of the security adoption around 5G is also the fact that a lot of compliances have to be met. Today, when you have applications coming in, especially in a multi-tenant, multi-user, multi-service kind of environment, you have no idea how this data is being segregated and stored and managed inside these nodes. This basically could drive compliance issues, and the ability to monitor that and to keep a check on that is very important, specifically in geographies around Europe, and many of the even developing and developed markets are adopting GDPR kind of regulations, and hence this becomes a very key criteria for security. Another thing is securing the infrastructure. Today, if you look at a traditional 5G MEC node, you will see that you're running containers and virtualized instances. Containers run under root permission. So majority of those applications that are running in today's container technologies obviously open up the whole infrastructure below it, and hence when you have a rogue application coming in, they can take, for example, control of hardware vulnerability that could exist, and hence these kind of security loopholes are difficult even to control, fundamentally because while you may have some amount of segmentation on the virtualization layer, there is very little control in a containerized environment, while in terms of the templates that are applied and things like that. Secured SDNs and software-defined networks are also creating a bunch of issues, because today when you look at a MEC node, the hardware is very, very primitive by nature. Actually, it's the software that's running on it that's enabling you to control the network, define the network and segregate the network. With a lot of these levers and dials, you also get an issue of how do you manage this configuration, and is the configuration right, and is the configuration being applied properly, right? The Internet of Things, while you may have a very secure edge node, just by the virtue of all these insecure devices connecting back to your node in the enterprise or in the telco, could create a lot of pathways into your enterprise, into your VPCs, that could affect your data privacy, loss of data, for example. This is, you typically don't have, I mean, as a CISO, you don't have too much of control on what those devices are. Quite a lot of those devices have been bought many years back. They've never been built to be exposed or connected in the way that they are now being connected. And hence, the vulnerabilities that they expose are very difficult to even patch and segregate against. So first is to identify these devices. Second is to actually create a security strategy on how do you want to actually ensure that those threats that arise from those devices are segregated from your critical flows. So attacks across the 5G, they have, we haven't seen anything specific to 5G that has come out so far. What we have seen is traditionally those attacks that we've seen before that have affected your IoT, OT, and IT infrastructure. A lot of them remain more or less similar. The techniques are still not very sophisticated, but the techniques are the volume of techniques are very high. Subex also publishes a threat report on a quarterly basis that if you can go and download, you can actually see how those threats have been manifesting across our honeypots and in the 5G infrastructure. One of the key things we're also saying is 5G nodes that support voice are largely still exploited fundamentally because a lot of the 5G infrastructure is now connecting back to legacy SS7 networks, which are wall gardens and have been exploited before and become conduits to these particular points. As more and more 5G gets deployed and they become standalone networks, what we will see is you will see a secure edge, a secure edge protection proxy being deployed between between network operators that prevent these attacks. But that's many years away because we still will see a lot of the 4G and 2G and 3G infrastructure being utilized for a very long time before they are completely disregarded for 5G. So for us, when you look at a security system that is supposed to go on a MEC node, some of the key criteria that you need to consider is, for example, the system should be capable of looking at threats over and across multiple types of use cases. For example, a MEC node or a 5G node that comes is deployed, you will have a lot of IoT devices connected to it. You will have, for example, the ability to run IT infrastructure and cloud services on it. So it basically will encompass IT, OT, IoT, and cloud. So across all four of these services, the threat landscape should be covered because this one node is going to become, the critical piece inside your IT infrastructure. And ability to look across network slices, network slicing that 5G provides the ability, your capability to run specific type of services on specific networks. So you're taking a physical pipe and then slicing it so that you are able to provide different quality of services across those slices, and then look for those threats that arise on the slices. Also, the MEC is a multi-access edge computing node. So multi-access is you could have multiple types of RAN, technologies on it, starting from Wi-Fi, LoRa, Sigfox, even Bluetooth. What you will notice is each of those technologies have their own, vulnerabilities. So that security software that runs in that MEC node should be capable of looking and identifying vulnerabilities across those different protocols, and still, not only identify but also mitigate them. Inside the MEC node, you typically have two types of networks. One is the overlay and the other one is the underlay. The overlay network is where you have the applications running and you have specific defined zones. Underlay is the one that is driving all of the overlay networks. So threats arise on both sides, and the threats could start at the underlay and go up into the overlay, or from the overlay traverse into the underlay and into another part of the another part of the MEC. And when all of this are possible, your implementation of the security solution should be capable of looking at these lateral traversals across these different network points and detect and also turn them, mitigate those threats. So these are some of the things. One of the key use cases that we have recently come across is the use of a MEC for network segmentation in an OT shop, and we're just starting a few such pilots in the medical space. Essentially, what's happening is a lot of the enterprises are unaware of what is being deployed in their network. So their networks have, OT, IoT, and cloud-based infrastructure with IT infrastructure, right? So you may have a video camera network. You may have, if you come to the hospital, you may have a medical equipment network. In the on the shop floor, on the manufacturing space, you have an IoT network. You may have, a legacy OT, SCADA, PLC kind of a network, and all of these have been built over the last 25 years. So essentially, there has been very little segmentation. There has been very little, even visibility in terms of the number of devices that are there in that space. And today, with the advent of the fourth generation industrialization, you will see that quite a lot of these networks that were previously air-gapped, that were never connected to the internet, are now slowly getting connected to the internet. And one of the key ways that they're connecting is using 5G and MEC nodes. So when you bring a MEC node into such an infrastructure, one of the key things that a CISO is asking us is, hey, can you identify what is on our network? Can you segment it? Can you better our security posture from what we are here today, wherever we are here today, right? So some of the key things that we do is the ability to go into those networks, identify all the different devices, identify what was the patch level, what was the end of life, what was the end of service for those devices, and then segment them using micro-segmentation, network access controls within the MEC node, and create secure zones so that critical flows or critical activities are separated from what we say, the control plane is separated from the telemetry plane. Or for example, you don't want the camera network to be on the same network as your SCADA systems. So that level of segregation is a use case that we are seeing that is largely coming up in the market. So one of the key things that I saw on this, on this topic was the fact that how a telco is monetizing 5G security. And I also saw a question by Mark Fitzsimmons, which said, okay, how a telco is actually taking all of this and making money out of it. So we are working with multiple partners. Telcos are some of them, but essentially what they're doing is they're bundling 5G security as part of their platforms, as part of their MEC platforms, and they're providing it. There are some that are doing that, some who are actually providing managed, who have their own SOC centers, or who are augmenting their SOC centers with our SOC centers and providing managed connectivity and basically, based on number of threats identified. So it's an outcome-based solution. Also, you have this differentiated pricing where you say that, hey, can we provide with security and without security, right? Subscription-based on pay as you use. So based on the amount of volume of bandwidth that you're utilizing, how much of you're charged a certain fee. Then there is the whole bundling, which has always been there for a very long time, and the most common method that we've seen, where the operator is bundling, the whole 5G service along with cybersecurity, right? And that's how the monetization models for 5G and security, 5G security, is evolving.
I see Kiran there gulping down another espresso, keeping himself up. So Shafi, for you, just could you sort of elaborate on, have you guys in the organization of healthcare, are you prepared for sort of security challenges? How do you do it? And I guess GDPR on the sort of policy side of things, not just the technical solutions. So
Yeah, so look, that's a key issue, data privacy, confidentiality, and it's been an ongoing issue for a long time. Look, if you go back to 2018, a couple of years ago, our hospital that I work in, the Royal London, was one that was attacked by the WannaCry Trojan horse, and it knocked out the hospital for at least 3 to 4 months. It was estimated by the NHS, for example, that it cost them £19 million worth of business, and also we lost 90,000 appointments in those few months. So the impact was huge. What that reflected was that we weren't ready, we weren't improving security, we didn't take it seriously enough. And the Freedom of Expression and Freedom of Information Act that we ensued after that, but all the hospitals hadn't updated security profiles. They just didn't invest money. That changed the framework for the UK nonetheless. What we're seeing now with technology coming in, people having more conversations, thinking about what does that security look like, how is data preserved, what's that protection like. I think that's missing still, David, is maturity of those conversations. We know what's coming, we know what has to be done, we're not confronting it head on. And I think what we need to do as stakeholders, as patients, as providers, as doctors, and governments, top-down approach, is hit this head on and say, look, these are the issues. How do we resolve them? We can't be completely secure. Impossible. There'll be some data breaches. There'll be some issues. However, what do we do to mitigate as much as possible? And that's the conversation we need to have. I just don't think we're having it well enough. And I'd implore governments to say, let's just deal with it. We know this issue. We use Facebook and social media. There's certain issues around that as well. How do we enable healthcare and ultimately bring patients on their journey? And patients, remember, are far more amenable to reason. They're not silly. They know what the limitations are by using data, being secure. And I think it's about taking that journey in a sensible fashion, but being mature enough to understand the implications of that.
Thanks. Maybe if we take one of the questions from the online chats. So we have one that I think for SK. The QKD technology from SK Telecom, is it patented? So maybe you can tell us something about that, Dong-hee.
Okay, thank you. Actually, the quantum key distribution technology was available from 1950s from universities, etc. At that point of time, it was tested in the physical labs. For example, University of Geneva in Switzerland, etc. So they initiated their work. And then at that point in time, just point to point. So it's just secure between two sites. But the QKD itself has a limit. For example, it cannot go beyond one, for example, depending upon protocol they're using, but it cannot go beyond over 100 or 120 kilometers. So we have to put the relay nodes, we call it trusted nodes in our network. So we can put several relay nodes in between them, but it was tested already. But nowadays it's now being used in the real network as we did. So it's now coming out of the lab and then commercially deployed. So there might be some patents on it. I'm not saying we don't have any patent, but there are many companies working on, for example, the Japanese and Swiss and South Korean or even Chinese. So a lot of companies are now working on the real commercialization of the initial idea. So I think many companies hold some commercialization aspect and patents on it. So it's not just us, but I'm saying we are pioneer the deployment and commercialization of the QKD into our network. I think this worked first in the commercialization. I mean the QKD into 5G, even LTE in 4G. Okay. So, but I guess a lot of companies working on it, like a BT, DT, etc. So even Verizon testing it in it with our technologies too. So I think a lot of companies hold some part of the commercialization aspect of QKD, I think.
Okay. Maybe another question here from Mark Fitzsimmons. Maybe if I give it to you, Nguyen, and he's sort of interested to learn how the telecom operators adopt to these new technologies. And this is sort of something I'm very keen on too. We talk about 5G and jumping into IoT and healthcare and all, but the telecoms operators are telcos. Elephants can't dance sometimes. And so how do we how do we learn how to help the different industries that we're claiming we can help?
Just I can share with you just for Vietnam situation, because we are developing countries, so the healthcare system is different between area. For example, the big hospital only is located in big city, so people tend to moving to a big city to go to hospital to diagnostic for any disease. So it has a lot of pressure on the central hospitals. So for this year, we deploy the system we call telehealth. At first, it can help to connect the central hospital with all kind of satellite hospital in the province and in the district level. And we currently we have deployed for about more than 1,000 point of healthcare connect about 10 central hospital with the other 1,000 system. So it can allow the doctor in the expert, medical expert in Hanoi can remote diagnostic the people in rural area by the way of communication. At first, we still using optical fiber, but we also extend the connection via mobile connection to the end user and to the remote doctor. So, and we also apply AI to for cancer diagnostic or some disease diagnostic by partnership with some other companies that have vertical knowledge. In Vietnam, also IBM also have the IBM Watson, and they also cooperate with some hospital for such kind of application of AI for medical health. But telehealth is one of our innovative service this year that is encouraged by the Minister of Vietnam also. Yeah. And we also connect to other countries like Laos for help the healthcare system in other countries. And we also have plan to connect to the system in USA. So connect the expert from USA to provide the training and handling some practical training for doctor in Vietnam also. Yeah.
Yes, maybe sort of healthcare. Let's go back to Shafi. You know, how do you feel? What do you suggest the operators do to best cooperate with the the medical and healthcare professionals? How do we make this bigger than some of its parts?
So I think that in terms of what's interesting is that whole private-public partnership. Before, healthcare systems, as you know, Dave, were very difficult to navigate. We've been, I think, risk-averse. We've not been open to change or open to ideas from industry. That's always been a problem. I think we've seen a change in the last few years, certainly the last 6 months, where it's more open, people looking for partnerships, stakeholders to come in. And it's about collaboration. I think the key word going forward is about collaboration. We understand that better now, bring industry partners. The pandemic, I think, has helped us understand that a bit better, that we can innovate faster. We need expertise from outside resources, and also experiences from industry who know how to bring things to market quickly, how to innovate rapidly. So I think it's a changing world. The NHS, for example, for many years has been very difficult. We had big global companies trying to come in and running away because healthcare was so difficult to navigate. Now they're more encouraged. They think there's a more of a top-down approach. It's more connected. It's not as disparate as before. So that's interesting. I think it's about engaging. It's about offering solutions, being the enabling person within the environment, having the conversations, and actually being determined to ultimately improve patient outcomes, which is the key measure for us, with that rather about the monetization side of things, which will come automatically. Also how you help healthcare system evolve. If you come with that ambition, I think healthcare system will listen to you, and they're ready to find those solutions as healthcare becomes more expensive and more difficult to take for a lot of people.
Yeah, I one for you. Nguyen, which vertical is the most potential use for 5G in Vietnam for IoT?
This year we also have consulting project with one of big 4 company, and at this moment we plan to focusing on 2 big vertical for IoT. The first thing is we call check and trace solution. It's been the solution that needs the IoT technology connectivity to remote monitoring any kind of device like the asset checker or smart meter. The second vertical that we focusing is on industry 4.0 solution. It's not IoT alone, but it will be the combination of IoT with analytics and AI, and also cloud computing. So it's the combination that for industry 4.0. And the key application that we put effort on is we want to provide a connected car solution. We have the ambition to provide the connectivity to every car in Vietnam using the OBD device, connect to every car to provide the information and entertainment on the car, and also for future support for the electric toll collection service.
Okay. Perhaps one last question for Kiran, and I'm sure we've got a couple more things coming in. Just in many sectors, compliance is a big deal. You mentioned about, you're able to cope with this. Could you explain a little bit more about how compliance, shapes the whole security issue for you in IoT?
We've seen a lot of compliance documentation or requirements coming in with the advent of IoT changing, right? Including the ISO 27001 standards have started referencing, or at least the audits are beginning to reference what do you have in terms of an IoT system or IoT devices inside your network. Something that was not in the purview of a traditional CISO. Because IoT was driving the business requirements essentially, and it was something that people put away. But with the need, with these things being audited, a lot of people are coming back. Also, there's regulations all around the world, right? GDPR is one. You have EN 303645, which is an NHC standard that's come out specifically in EU. We have the Californian law on IoT devices in terms of the username, password encryption, and these are driving, keeping at least from a regulation and a compliance perspective, CISOs awake. There's something that they need to comply, they need to meet, and as part of their jobs, that's something that they come back and ask you, hey, can you help us with this? What we do is, for us, compliance is many ways a lot of documentation, a lot of collection of evidences, a lot of looking at data and how that data has traversed over a period of time. And for us, from pure network-based security solution, compliance drives the requirements on compliance are now changing our products to include things like log management of disparate systems, right? Ability to keep those logs and manipulate those logs and show relevant data that help those CISOs and help our customers meet those compliances. That's how it's changing for us.
Okay. I think we're almost up to time. So maybe if I pass back to CK to sort of finish off and let us know what you think.
Sure. Yeah, first of all, again, thanks all the speakers and David for to go through this entire 1.5-hour session to sharing different perspective from the telcos, from the user, as well as some of the solution side of it. For me, like we also work with Subex on some of the projects. So cybersecurity is something is very critical, and many times, as I mentioned in the beginning, that is not understood very well, both from the solution provider as well as solution seeker. Because as we know, when you talk about IoT, we need to talk about end-to-end solution. It's not just about my device is secured, or my infrastructure is secured, or my connectivity is secured, my platform is secured. The challenge from the solution provider side of it, they will claim that their piece of the solution is secure, but customer is looking for end-to-end security, right? So there's one challenge that how solution providers in this complex IoT ecosystem need to rethink about how do we look at the cybersecurity from the day one, from the solution perspective. But at the same time, for the solution seekers, whether it's into healthcare, whether it's into industrial, smart buildings, facility, and so forth, they're also getting bombarded by the vendors, if I can say, and they're kind of scratching their head. Now, who should I look up to? Who will take the ownership, not just from the technical point of view, but also maybe the commercial, the compliance, the regulation, as Kiran mentioned, some of those areas, who can handhold their journey, because even they don't know how to go about it. I think, but at the same time, I also recommend, while there are threats, growing threats, but there are obviously better solutions coming along. So many companies also kind of keep wondering, should we start the transformation journey or not, digital transformation, because there's a threat, right? So there is no end to it. Cybersecurity is not something you can do 100% today. Even like we started session like 4 p.m. Singapore time, but the threats out there publicly available in last 90 minutes would have, I don't know, increased by X-fold within this time, right? So we can always be secured as like maybe a few minutes before, but this should not stop our IoT journey, transformation journey, and everybody has a play in this whole ecosystem. So the idea of hosting this session, as we all know, is driving the knowledge fundamentally first. Let's understand what it takes to build a good, safe, secure solution, whether we are customers or providing solution to the customer. Second part is the network, who we should be partnering with, right? There's nobody else, nobody can do alone, all things connected, even though the name says, but we can't do everything. So hence we partner with the solution providers like Subex and many more of them. And lastly, let's collaborate and hope to build better secure solutions. So I hope this conversation will drive some collaboration within the speakers, as well as hopefully some of the participants out there listening patiently all these insights. So there are experts I was looking into in the audience also. Hopefully, if you want to discuss some of this topic or projects, feel free to connect with any of us. So with that, this is All Things Connected Virtual Thought Leadership Series on 5G, IoT, and network cybersecurity.